This happened to me just a little over a month ago. I live about 20 miles from the city in which I work. I live out in the country, and about a short walking distance from my house is a highway, and on the corner is a 24/7 gas station. On one Saturday night, I went by there right before midnight to grab some Cajun peanuts. I saw one car parked on the side, which is normal, usually just a guy working, and rarely any customers at this time. I walked in the store and didn't see anybody. Nobody behind the counter or in the store. So I took my time and assumed that they were in the bathroom or stepped to the back of the store. I began feeling weird and uncomfortable, so I waited another minute, even though it seemed like forever, and I eventually called out and asked if anybody was there. I didn't get any response, so I waited one more minute and put the peanuts down and walked out the door. I checked the car parked on the side, and there wasn't anything troubling. I even glanced on the back side of the store and didn't see anybody. At this point, I felt really uncomfortable, so I decided to call the police. They showed up 10 to 15 minutes later, but it felt much longer than that, and they searched the place. Upon inspecting the place, they found the cashier dead in the men's bathroom, beaten to death. They called in backup and asked me to recap what I experienced, and then I went home. This is where things became really terrifying. So I arrived home and saw my dog, who was an inside dog, in the front yard urinating and just staring at me. I also noticed that my front door was cracked open. At this point, my heart was racing, so I grabbed my dog and headed back to the gas station and let the police know. They sent one of their guys to search my house. Nothing was stolen or out of place, but there was sign of forced entry. About 1 week passed, and I got a call from my brother, who works for the county sheriff's office. According to him, the police pulled the camera footage, and about 10 minutes before I walked into the store, someone came in, started punching on the cashier, and then dragged him into the bathroom. On the footage, you can see me walk in and look around and call out, and then you can see me walk out and check out the car, walk to my vehicle, and make a call. About the time I'm in the vehicle, the alleged murderer walks out of the bathroom and sneaks out the back door, and before leaving the view of camera, he takes off in the general direction of my house. Fortunately, my wife was out with some friends watching Beauty and the Beast, but I'm convinced that I missed a murderer at the gas station and then he broke into my house. This week, I had a new security system installed alongside a new front door, but I'm pretty sure whoever did this is still out there. I work evenings as a dispatcher in a medium-sized Midwestern city. I was driving home at 2 o'clock a.m. when I stopped for gas. In retrospect, it was stupid to have stopped at all. The gas station was poorly lit and completely empty of any other customers. But I knew the shady areas of town, and this was not usually one of them. As I was pumping gas, I noticed a middle-aged woman sitting on the curb across the parking lot. It was a cold night and had just started raining. The woman was not wearing weather-appropriate clothing, so she was drenched. When the woman saw that I was watching her, she called out to me from across the parking lot. My second of many stupid decisions that night was choosing to engage with her. I was worried for her, so I approached her to see what sort of help I could offer. She had told me that she was trying to get home, but no one was willing to help her. She explained that she was trying to get to a certain part of town, but the cab ride was $60 and she only had $40. So she then asked if I could help her. I don't usually give money to panhandlers, but this woman seemed genuine. The weather was terrible and my job centers around helping people, so I agreed. I told her I didn't have any cash, but if she would come with me inside, I'd take some money out of the ATM and give her a few dollars. However, the ATM wasn't working. She followed me back outside, chatting with me as I opened my driver's door to get in, and then she got in my car. I was too shocked to really say anything. I sat staring at her as she buckled herself into the passenger seat. As soon as she got into my car, her demeanor changed entirely. She no longer seemed forlorn as much as she did extremely, extremely excited and restless. She then told me to take her to her aunt's house because her aunt could give her money. Of course, alarm bells were going off in my head. Although my first instinct was to tell her to get the hell out of my car, my guts told me that that would be very dangerous. She'd already proven to be unpredictable. She seemed to be high, and I didn't know if she had any weapons on her. Forcing her out of my vehicle, I thought, had the potential to elicit a violent reaction. I then asked her where she was asking me to take her. She responded and said, "Just start driving, and I'll tell you where to turn." I then told her if she wanted me to consider driving her anywhere, she needed to tell me where she was headed. I said this, even though I had no intention of driving her anywhere. She then told me not to worry, and that she was not a bad person, and that she wasn't going to rob me or anything, but just needed me to drive. I firmly told her no, and asked once again what her aunt's address was. She then gave me a street name, and I asked what the house number was. As I was asking her questions, she got really agitated. We still had not left the gas station parking lot. I considered getting out of the car and going into the gas station for help, but she had seemed to know and be friendly with the one attendant that was inside when I tried to get money, and I also wasn't going to leave her alone in my car. Finally, she snapped at me and said, "Why are you asking so many questions? I thought we were friends. You don't trust me?" I explained to her that I worked at a police department and told her it was my job to ask these sort of questions. Upon hearing this, she became enraged. She started yelling at me about being a snitch, about trying to get her in trouble, just in general losing her damn mind. At this point, I'm more scared than ever. I just wanted her gone, but my instincts told me asking her to get out of my car wouldn't work, so I decided to take a risk. I explained to her that I wasn't a police officer, but I just worked at a police department. I then offered to take her to Walmart to see if they had an ATM that worked. My idea was to get her out of my car as peacefully as possible, then lose her in the store. She liked my idea and immediately calmed down. I knew that driving off with this woman in my car was incredibly risky, but it seemed like my best option at the time. As we're driving, she kept talking to me. Her thoughts were erratic, bouncing all over the place. It sometimes seemed difficult for her to follow through on a thought. She was now no longer enraged, but instead really calm. She stated that she was glad we were friends now, and that she had about 5 or 6 people trying to get her. She also told me that she was going to come to my job tomorrow so that we can arrest them together. To try and distract her, I told her that we could talk about that tomorrow, and that tonight her goal was to try to get home. She then mentioned what part of town she was trying to get to, but what I noticed was that this part of town was not the same area that she mentioned the first time. I questioned her about this, and she said that she made a mistake. She also mentioned that the cab ride was $40 and that it was far away. I questioned her on that because I told her that she mentioned to me earlier that she had $40. She confirmed that she had $40, but then said that the cab ride was $60, reverting back to what she originally told me at the gas station. I paused for a moment in silence. It was terrifyingly obvious that this woman was utterly full of crap, because the details of her story were constantly changing. When we pulled into the Walmart parking lot, she finally got out of my car and followed me into the store. I told her before we went to find an ATM, I needed to use the restroom. My plan was to call the police from inside a stall, but she followed me into the bathroom, and that's when things got really weird. She grabbed the crook of my arm and then whispered into my ear that if I didn't have no money for her, that was okay. But then she asked me if I would like for her to perform oral sex on me. I told her no as forcefully as I could manage, bolted into a stall, and locked the door as fast as I could possibly manage. As soon as I had a barrier between us, I told her that I had some friends at the police department that could probably help her better than I could, and that I was going to call them and that we could figure this out together. Again, at the mention of the cops, she started screaming at me. I just kept reiterating that the police would help her. She snapped at me that she was just going to leave and stormed out of the bathroom. But it wasn't over. I waited to make sure she was really gone. Sure enough, not 60 seconds after she left, she came back into the bathroom and started banging on the stall door. And she said something that scared me more than anything else. She told me to come back to my car with her because she left her beer in my car. I blatantly told her no. I saw her get into my car and she had absolutely nothing with her other than the clothes on her back. After that, she left the bathroom again and didn't come back. I waited a good 5 minutes before exiting the bathroom. I immediately found a manager who called the police for me. Thankfully, I was in a different police jurisdiction from the one I work in, because I was mortified at how entirely stupid I had been the whole night and would have died of embarrassment if any of my coworkers had responded. The officer that responded took my statement and advised me to be more careful in the future. He said that sometimes panhandlers turn violent, and that just recently there had been a report of a woman who matched my description assaulting a good Samaritan that had stopped to try to help her. I definitely learned a lesson on stranger danger, and I'm lucky to have come out unharmed. I'm an 18-year-old female who works the 4 p.m. to midnight shift at a nice, clean gas station convenience store in Canada. Because the location of my workplace is right beside a highway, it is common for people to settle in the parking lot for a while or even the entire night. What isn't common is when someone parks right outside the window beside the cash register, parallel to the building. It was about 11 p.m. and I was preparing to close my shift, excited to go home and rest. A rush of customers came and went when I noticed a car parked outside. Right beside the cash register, there is a huge window in order for the workers to look out to see the customers at the pumps. Many people have parked there before, but none have ever parked parallel to the store, snuggled up to the curb. I tried to shrug it off and told myself that maybe the man or woman inside was just exhausted. About 30 minutes go by and the car was still parked there. I had to go outside to shut the oil shack, which happened to be right next to where the car was parked. As I closed the shack, I looked into the car to see the driver's seat reclined all the way back with a man laying back, with a smirk on his face. I rushed inside and got behind the counter, right as one of my regular customers walked in. I pointed out the man in the car, jokingly saying that he was waiting for me. The regular seemed worried, telling me to call the cops. He told me to stay safe and that he had to get back to work. I decided against calling the cops because the guy could have easily just been resting after a long haul. At around 11:45, I decided to call my sister because the guy was still outside. We live about 15 minutes from my workplace, a perfect amount of time for her to get there in time for closing. I told her what was going on, and then she responded that she was leaving at that moment and would be there soon. 3 minutes after I got off the phone with her, the guy gets out of the car. I panicked a bit. I was gonna close in less than 10 minutes, and now is when he decides he wants a snack. As I watch him, I notice he is walking around near the pumps, staring off into the sky, which I assumed he was looking for cameras. 2 minutes later, and he walks into the store, not returning my greeting. He walks right towards the bathrooms. A couple of customers walked in, and because I was busy with them, I assumed the man may have walked out without me knowing. At 12:01, my sister showed up. I was so happy to see her, but the car was still parked outside. She came in and asked what was going on. I then asked her if the man was in the car, to which she replied no. That's when my heart began to beat faster. I looked at the bathroom doors, where both signs were green, which means that the bathrooms were vacant. When the bathroom lights are on, you can see the glow from underneath the doorway. The lack of the glow made me assume there was no one in there either, because the lights are motion censored. I told my sister that there was no one in the bathrooms, so I began locking the doors and shutting off the lights. My sister, with her bravery, opened the woman's bathroom, and guess who was sitting on the toilet? She closed the door and began yelling at the man, telling him that the store was closing. A couple of minutes passed and he was still in there, so she pounds on the door a little bit more. It was about 12:08 now, and the creep comes out of the bathroom, grabs a cookie, buys it, and walks out. He never even looked me in the eye or spoke. He got into his car right away and hurried off. I finished locking up and met my sister at a Tim Hortons nearby. Had my sister not been there, I'm unsure what could have been the outcome. I could easily not be here today. Thankfully, that day, at the beginning of my shift, I put in my 2 weeks notice. I had to work the next night, which was uneventful, yet I was still scared to even go outside. After telling my parents, my mom thought that the man may have scanned the property for cameras and went into the bathroom to wait for me to check them during the closing process of the store. He may have parked parallel for a quick getaway. I am so glad that I'm done working there.